carpet or doing interviews. You'll find her with celebrities and all the latest news. She's here, she's there, she's everywhere, she's always on the go. So sit back, relax and get ready. This is the Corey Taylor Talks Show.
My name is Stephen Nasser. My wife, Francoise Nasser. We have been traveling and invited all over the world, I should say. We have been in Europe, in the American continent, in Mexico. Today, it is my 1086th lecture. Thank you, Ryan.
View of the book. That'd be very nice.
The year was 1941. We lived in the Nasser house in Budapest, Hungary. My grandfather established the house in 1872. My father, Deja, my mother, Georgia, my brother, Andres, and me, Istvan, but everybody called me Pista. We were very happy during those years in the Nasser house. I looked up to my brother. He was my guiding light. I adored him. I remember I was very happy when he got a brand new fishing rod and I inherited his old bamboo rod, which was taped together with an electric tape. But we caught fish anyway, and we used to go home with great joy. And my mother fried the fish what we ate. We were the pride of our family. I always remember those days, and I kept it in my memory, locked in forever. 1943 came, and the Nazis marched in, when our beautiful life came to a crushing end. When they took us away from our home, we were taken in the outskirts of Budapest, in a brick factory called Budafok. And one morning, I saw my uncle, Uncle Deja, his name was. He was killed by a Nazi in front of our eyes. Awful days, the first killing. We didn't know what was coming on. Until one day we saw trains are coming into the brick factory and we knew we were going to be taken away from Budapest, my birthplace. We were separated from the family, mother, my little cousin, my aunt, and with my brother I was lucky to end up in the same cattle car. When the Nazis came in, they took us into boxcars, just like what you see. Here is an actual picture of the Hungarian Jews being herded away in cattle cars, approximately 80 people to one cattle car. As we entered into the cattle car, the last two persons were given a metal bucket about this size. One bucket was full of water, the other bucket was empty for human waste, sewage. We took these buckets, the last two people, and about 80 of us crammed into a boxcar. Can you imagine just about the amount of people we have here. It took approximately 4 or 5 days before we arrived to Auschwitz. Every day the train stopped, they give us fresh water, they give us just enough food to survive, but nobody would empty the bucket. That was our punishment. When the door slid open, I tried to stand up and take a deep breath of fresh air. I did. It was awful. The air smelled so foul, I had to back in to the sewage-ridden car. Why? What were these gray, greenish smog covering over Auschwitz? But the gas chamber killed so many people, the crematorium couldn't keep up with it. All these thousands of extra bodies, the Nazis burned over a bonfire, burning human flesh. That's what was covering all over Auschwitz, and that's what we smelled. I went into my pocket, I pulled out a little pocket knife, and slowly I put the knife behind me, and I shoved it up where the sun did not shine. I didn't realize at that time, because of this maneuver, I would be able to write my diary. Had no connection. My brother and I, we were standing at the platform when we were ordered to get off the train, and we did. But before we did, Andris looked out and he said to me excitedly, "Pista, look over there. It looks like Mom and Bougie, little Peter." And he was right. We pushed our way through the crowd. We did join Mom and Bougie. Little Peter was a toddler. He was about 15 months old. He was hanging onto Mother's fingers. We were very happy to see each other, but my aunt, she was petrified. She said, "If the Nazis think I'm going to separate from my baby, I'm going to fight for his and my life." We tried to encourage her, give her hope, and we told her, "And Bougie, apparently we're going to be here for a long time, waiting for inspection. But when inspection comes, why don't you pick up little Peter, hold him in your arms, and pretend you are breastfeeding him?" She thought it was a good idea. This was the situation. My aunt, with baby Peter in her arm, standing in front of me. I was behind her. Then my mom and Andres. Mother was between us. And this is what I saw. Inspection started, and one Nazi bully rushed over to my aunt to grab the baby from her arm. She wouldn't let him go. The Nazi pulled, Mother held him back. Can you imagine that 15-year-old youngster? He was already scared and crying. By now he was screaming his lungs out. He was being torn apart. The Nazi was stronger. Eventually, he got the baby. He put the baby on his shoulder. He was screaming and crying, and he started to walk away with the baby. My aunt could not move because a Nazi was holding her from behind, restraining her to go after the baby. But she put up a death struggle. Finally, she was able to get away from the Nazi's grip. She ran after the one carrying the screaming baby. This Nazi, as he was carrying the baby, he heard the commotion. He stopped for a second and he just turned back. He was face to face with my aunt. My aunt took her sharp fingernails, attacked his face, made a bloody mess of his face. The blood splat on the innocent child also. But in a split second, the Nazi whose grip she got away from, he was right behind her. He took his revolver. He didn't shoot. There were crowds of people. He took the revolver by the muzzle and with the butt struck my aunt so hard, the back of the skull, it cracked open. She fell to the ground. I thought she was dead. I hope she was dead, that she didn't see what happened afterwards. The Nazi with the bleeding face rushed over to the boxcar where we disembarked from. He threw the baby up in the air. He caught the baby by the feet, put baby's body behind his shoulder, and he swung his body, his head crushed right against the wagon wheel. It was awful. I can never forget it. Within a half an hour, we were herded towards some other cattle cars and we were taken away to a forced labor camp unknown to us. Finally, we arrived to a place called Mühldorf. It was the work camp of Dachau. When we got separated from Mom, we had a feeling we're never going to see her again.
Dachau, factory of horrors, one of the oldest of the Nazi prison camps. It is known that from 1941 to 1944, up to 30,000 people were entombed here at one time. The Nazis said it was a prison for political dissenters, habitual criminals, and religious enthusiasts.
But the workplace when we arrived the following day, it was enormous. It's like a huge hangar made out of cement and rebar wires. The roof was close to 15 feet thick. We had to work very hard. Andris and I carried many cement bags, and many of us collapsed under its weight. As we were carrying the heavy cement sacks, I watched how people take the torn cement paper bags at night and carry them back into our barracks. And I had one idea. What would be if I could make a journal? I was wondering, am I going to survive? Are we going to survive? I had no guarantee. And I wanted to write down my thought, my experience, how much I missed Mother and the family, what Andris and I and others had to go through all the beatings. Maybe it would be too much for paper and pencil, but at least if I could put it down, I would leave some facts which has happened to us, what the world has not known before. And I decided to write the journal.
Pista, if they catch us with this diary, they'll kill us both.
Andres, everything's gonna be fine. Your plan's ingenious. I mean, look at how garbage these drawings are. No one's gonna want to look at this.
Still, Pista, I'm just worried.
Andres, this diary needs to be shared with the world. No one can forget what's happened here. Neither can I. I need to be able to remember what happened every single day so that this injustice can live on, so that this will never happen again.
Then promise me this. you will share our whole story with the world.
Patrice, I promise, nothing will be forgotten. Patrice, I promise you, everything's gonna be okay.
It was around March 1945. One morning, when the whistle blew, we had to get up and we had to go to work. Unfortunately, Andris couldn't get out of bed. He was too sick. I had to go without him. I felt abandoned. I felt alone. I wanted to see his face and share my experience, how it was without him for a day. I got shocked when I walked into the barrack. Andris' bed was empty, only the straws. I asked my barrack commander, "What happened to my brother, Andris?" He said, "Well, you should know. If he cannot work, we took him to death barracks." To me, that was a challenge, and I tried to figure out how I can rescue him. Death barrack was still within our compound. That particular Sunday coming up was one Sunday a month we had off. I did find death barracks. I went around asking, Andris, Nasser, where are you?" I was frantic. Finally, towards the end, when I said, Andris, Nasser, where are you?" One of the prisoners, like a skeleton under the blanket, he started to sit up very, very slowly with his eyes closed. Then he opened his eyes. Beautiful blue eyes. Nobody else had eyes like that. "Andris, I'm here to rescue you." Andris looked up and said, "Dear God, thank you. I knew Pista would come before I die." I replied, "Andris, you're not going to die. I have some food for you. You're going to come back with me, and we will be liberated soon. I can hear the guns far away getting closer." Then I begged the person beside him and we changed places. I slid beside Andris. I put his head on my arm. I looked into his beautiful blue eyes and I said, "Andris, I love you." He said, "I love you too, my little brat." Then I looked at him again. "Andris, blink, say something." Andris couldn't. Andris died right in my arms. I screamed out, "I know you up in heaven with the others until we meet again." And at last, I took my 2 fingers, pulled his eyelids down, and let my brother, who I love so much, on his own. I had to return to reality, to my barracks, to prove to Andris I will survive and keep my word, to talk to people, to share my diary, and make sure I give him the message, the appreciation of freedom and the appreciation of family. I did share with the audience how I felt when I was bullied, when I had the yellow star on. And I do challenge the people who bully others. I do ask them, do you realize you can be potential killers? You know what I would give from my life? If I could hug my mother, my dad, my brother again, I would give half my life, but I can't. They've been killed by Nazi bullies. And I make the student know it is their choice. You see these hands? Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. This hand can hurt, or this hand can help. It's entirely up to you. And then when it comes to a conclusion, I get down and I tell them to stand all up, to hold hands like a chain, and they look up on the screen where it says freedom is not free. And then Françoise and I, we go, we break the chain of hands and we join them. All of them to repeat, never again.
Never again.
Thank you very much. God bless America and God bless you all. Thank you. After liberation, back in Hungary, I returned into the Nasser house. I met my uncle, Charles. My uncle was very happy to see me. Pista, it's so nice to have you back. At least you arrived out of the family of 20-some odd. But please tell me, what happened to my baby and my wife? That struck me like lightning. I looked into his face and I said, Uncle Charles, I'm sorry. I do not know what happened because we got separated in Auschwitz. That was a big lie. For 50 years, I kept it a secret. It was in my diary. I could not share the diary with anyone for 50 years to protect my uncle. In 1996, my uncle passed away. That was, in a way, my second liberation, that I was free to share the promise I give my brother, to share my diary with the public. And I did start lecturing, and of course, I wrote my diary into a book. Since 1997, I had my first engagement in Pahrump. That was our first lecture. To me, it was very important. I went around schools all over the world, over 1,000 occasions, with the help of my wife, Françoise, who was like a solid rock, support me all the time. I shared my experience with the public, with the students. It made us feel so good to receive all those thousands of letters from students, how I changed their life, how they make appreciate the family, what they had, instead of take it for granted, how they appreciate the morning when they wake up.
Oh, do you remember this one?
Oh, yeah.
To Mr. Nasser, I thank you so much for saving my life. I remember when I met you at Sierra Vista Middle School. That was the first time I ever met someone from the Holocaust. Through different areas of my life, I tried taking my own life because I was being bullied. And I had a lot of people tell me that everyone could be happy if I died, and I actually listened to them. And now that I look back, I am glad that I did not, because after reading your book, I start to appreciate my life and actually start trusting God more, and you honestly saved my life. And you have become one of my biggest inspiration of all time. Thank you so much. Your family is looking down on you and so proud of you. I hope that I get to hear back from you soon. Truly, Kayla Ponce Garcia.
I tell him, why don't you go home? Show some appreciation to your family, even if you come from a broken home. Take your arm, throw it around your loved ones, and tell them, Mom, Dad, or whoever you are, I love you. You know something? That's the greatest gift you can give them. They will appreciate it. And I also challenge them further. If you have enough courage, take your arm once more, throw it around your beloved ones, and tell them, this hug is for Mr. Nasser, because he hasn't got a chance to hug his family. This is the last picture I have painted in watercolor. I wanted to paint Andris and myself. I finished most of myself, but Andris I never completed. I always wanted to finish it. Then something happened. I realized that picture, the way it is completed. Andris never had a chance to finish his life. That's why I consider this painting complete.
Hello everybody, and welcome to Corey Taylor Talks, live from Las Vegas. I am just so unbelievably honored to have my guest today. He is truly one of the most incredible people I've ever heard of, and I think his story is so important, And even just thinking about what this man has gone through, I could start tearing up. And I'm just so honored that you're going to share your story today. And I really think people need to pay attention and remember what happened in a not so distant past, and really learn from what happened and make this world a better place, because I think people are forgetting. And I really am so excited you get to share your story today, and I'm just so incredibly honored. I usually ask a lot of questions, but I think I won't be able to add really much to this conversation. I think he needs to explain his story from start to finish. So I'm just going to sit here and listen with you guys, and we're going to listen to this incredible man's story. So I have Mr. Stephen Nasser with me. So hi, Stephen.
Hi, Corey.
Hi. Like I said, I'm just so honored to have you on. And I don't want to talk much. I just want you to tell your story how you seem fit. So take it
Well,
away.
the pleasure and the privilege is mine to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Unfortunately, there are over 11 million people who would like to be in my shoes, but they are an audience of theirs, including my family. There were 21 of us were taken away from Budapest, Hungary, and out of the 21, I'm the only one who came back alive. The rest of my family have been my audience. And like I promised my brother when he died in my arms in 1945, approximately April the 20th, just before we were liberated, and I promised him that as long as I live, I'm going to try to keep a smile on my face, because he did ask me a question before his death. He said to me, Pista, Pista is my Hungarian nickname. He said to me, Pista, I am going to leave you very soon. I feel it in my bones. After I'm gone, would you like us up there be happy or miserable? I asked him, Aldrich, what kind of question is that? Of course, I would like you to be happy if it's possible. What can I do? He said, very simple. Keep a smile on your face. As long as you're smiling and we see you, we'll be smiling at you. If you're in pain, if you're in distress, of course, we'll have nothing to smile about. So since then, many times I catch myself with a smile, couple of teardrops, but that is part of life. We have to make the best of it. By the way, there are many survivors living. Unfortunately, lots of survivors passed away very quickly. One of the survivors passed away just over 100, Henry Kronberg, and we lost him just a few weeks ago. Henry, you are up there with my family and your family. How did it all start? I have to go back in my memory into the 1930s, 1940s. I was born in 31, February 17. My family, of course, was a lovely family. I have many good memories, all the way back until I was about age 12. And then everything broke loose. When the Nazis marched into Hungary, Budapest, Hungary was one of the last countries who surrendered the Jewish people to the Nazis. I remember Regent Horthy, who was the regent of Hungary. They had no king, even so it was a kingdom, and he had to let the Nazis take over. In Budapest, it was a beautiful city, and in the 1940s, the population was approximately 1 million. Out of 1 million people, over 400,000 were Jews. It was a very prosperous city. until the rule came, all Jews had to move out from their place and had to move into a ghetto area. Now, over there, the ghetto was not guarded, or they had no walls, but we were ordered to move in there, which we did. My father died just a short time before of a natural death. He was a cavalry officer in World War I, and he had a liver disease which took him. Of course, we shed a lot of tears. But we realized, at least I realized, I had to give thanks to God that he has taken him before the Nazis were able to, because he did not have to suffer through the Holocaust. So after the ghetto started, my mom had some connection with a Christian gentleman. I remember his name was Martinovich. He had a factory manufacturing some supplies to the cavalry. So it was a war factory. He was able to put my brother, myself, into that factory. I was 13, my brother was 16, and we had done certain amount of work, but we lived within the walls or the gates of this factory. That factory was not in the ghetto, it was outside. So for time being, we were pretty well protected. They left us alone. Until I remember we had an air raid, and my brother and I, from our small room where we had a couple of beds, we ran across the open field, or we wanted to run across the open field to run down into an airfield shelter, which had a door flat with the ground. You open it up, and then you can see the stairs going down. I was ready to run across the field, and my brother said, "Hold it, Pista. Shrapnel's all over flying. We can be hit by shrapnel." I said, "Andres, I want you to come with. I'm not waiting. Shrapnel, no shrapnel. I'd rather be missed by a shrapnel than hit by a bomb." So we ran across the field, opened the door into the shelter. We tried to scramble down. When we heard the whistle, the bomb was coming. We threw ourselves down the stairs, and the building where we were standing, it was hit square on top. So I had to thank God. That was an escape. Afterwards, my mother heard following day that the Martinovich factory was bombed. Of course, she was in tears. Everybody had to wear a yellow star, all Jews. And if you were caught outside the ghetto or anywhere outside not wearing the star, you get caught and you were taken away. The star we had to wear was very similar like this. So we were gathering, cleaning the ruins inside the factory premises, and there was a big iron gate where people piled up there, tried to look through who died, who didn't die, what happened. And we went to the wrought iron gate, looked through, and all of a sudden, in the crowd, in a black dress, saw Mother. I can see tears running down her cheek. Then we start yelling, "Mom, Mom!" And then we realized it could be dangerous. She didn't have a star on. People, if they wanted to turn her in, they could have. But anyway, Mom came to the iron gate, and through the iron gate we were touching, kissing each other, and finally I tried to whisper to her, "Mom, please leave. You know we okay. We want you safe. You have no stars." She said, "I know. As long as I saw you, there is another day for me to live." Anyway, this was just a little episode. Not much afterwards, some Nazi trucks came and picked us up from the factory. The factory owner, Mr. Martinovich, he said goodbye. He gave us some chocolate bars in our pocket. And he apologized. Of course, it was out of his hand. He done what he could. After we were taken by the truck to a place called Budafok, it's outside Hungary, lots of manufacturing, brick factories, such, and we were herded into a brick factory by the truck. Now, that factory was completely surrounded by gates. When we went through the gate, as it happened, we met up with Mom and Buzzy, her little boy Peter, he was a toddler, also an uncle of mine, Deja Veres, his wife, and we tried to bed down at the night. Well, bedding down in the brick factory was laying down some clothing, what we have, on the cold ground that we shouldn't freeze, try to hug each other, cover each other. It wasn't the Hilton, but we were still alive. Following morning, my uncle Deja, that was the same name as father, was also Deja. Anyway, Uncle Deja was lying on the ground, and he was snoring very heavily. I was still laying with my brother and mother beside me. I opened my eyes, and I knew he was snoring, and all of a sudden, in the low light, because it was maybe about 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, I saw this Nazi officer shadow stepping over sleep bodies, and he walked over to my uncle. With his legs spread, his head was between his feet. He didn't move, he was sleeping. I could see the devilish smile on his face. He took his revolver. He put the revolver not to his head, beside his ear, into the ground, and fired. From the explosion, he jumped up. He didn't know what was going on. He was a pretty strong man. He took the Nazi by the throat, ready to just lift him up. The Nazi kneed him. In his private part, he doubled over. Then with a couple of shots, he killed him. That was the first casualty I've seen. Not much later, cattle cars rolled into the compound, and we were forced to take a cattle car. I got separated from my mom and Buzzy, little baby, or the toddler, and I was hanging onto my brother's coat when we were ordered to take the boxcar. Before we took the boxcar, they put a ramp up the step. Not everyone, but some boxcars did. Some boxcars, people really had to crawl up high because the steps were very high up. But when we went up the ramp, the last two people by the Nazis were handed a metal bucket. One bucket had water in it. The other bucket had nothing. It's for our sanitation when nature called. Then they closed the boxcar. We started to roll out. Destination, we didn't know. Now I can tell you. Destination, Auschwitz-Birkenau. We went through the Hungarian high mountains called Tatra, similar like the Alps. And after a day or so, that bucket started to get full, approximately 80 people. It wasn't too appetizing. It smelled a lot, and when the bucket was getting full from the rickety train, it was splashing all over. We knew we had to do something, so we had a few people who were lucky. They were standing up near the opening, which was a window. It had barbed wires on it. And we told them, you people have a chance to breathe some fresh air. Take this bucket, somebody ordered them, and slush it through the window. They tried. Because of the barbed wire, they couldn't put the bucket through. A lot of that sewage was whisked back into the car from air pressure all over their body. So our circumstances were awful. Sliding in our own sewer, bucket full. Finally, the train stopped in a place. They give us fresh water. They refused to empty the bucket. So we continued until we reached Auschwitz. In Auschwitz, when we stopped and the doors were open from the outside, it was quite hard on our eyesight because we were used to semi-darkness. But anyway, I was sitting very close to the door with my brother Andres, and I stood up. I hung onto the side of the door, bent out, take a couple of breaths of fresh air. When I took a breath of fresh air, that air was awful. The sewage smelled a lot, but the outside air, it had different odor to it. And I looked around, I saw the barbed wires, which were electrified. Then I saw lots of people. We were an advantage because the boxcar was a certain height, and before we got out, we had a good view. I saw people milling around all over. Then I also saw above the head of people and boxcar in the sky, gray, greenish smog laid all around. That's what I smelled. It was awful. Of course, now I can tell you, because I know for sure, that came from the odor of crematorium, and the gas chambers killed so many people, the crematorium could not actually get rid of them because they were full capacity. So hundreds or probably thousands, I don't like to throw figures around, but a lot of bodies. And prisoners had to dig ditches, huge ditches. They dumped these bodies in there, and they were piled in a heap. Also, the Nazis, they poured some gas or some liquid over them and burnt them in open flame. And all these hundreds or maybe thousands of bodies burning. No wonder the sky was full of greenish gray smog. Burned bodies smell awful. In Auschwitz, we only stayed a day or two. And when we disembarked, we got the orders, get out from the boxcars. My brother and I, we got off, but before we did, he looked around and excitedly he said, "Pista, look over there. Does it look to you it's Mom and Bougie and the baby? I said, yes. Let's go and join them. It wasn't easy. We had to use our shoulder, our elbow. We shoved and pushed. People cursed. We didn't care. We wanted to get to them, which we did. We met them. We were hugging each other, very happy. We're still alive. But my aunt was very nervous, and I don't blame her. There was old Peter standing, hanging out your finger. And we told that we have to go through inspection. And the rumor, they're going to separate babies from parents. And she made a statement. If the Nazis think I'm going to abandon my baby, I'm going to fight for his or my life. In no way I'm going to give up. Then Andres and I, we looked together and had an idea, and we said, Aunt Bougie, we have to line up now. I don't know how long we'll be in that line. But when you see we're getting closer to inspection, why don't you pick up little Peter, hold Peter in your arm, and pretend you're breastfeeding? Even the Nazis would not separate breastfeeding baby from its mother. How wrong we were. This was the situation. In the column, we standing, my brother was in the line on the outside. Mom was right beside him. I was beside my mom. And Bougie was standing in front. And eventually, he picked up the baby when she saw we going to be inspected. We had excellent view. I wish we didn't. And I'm going to try to tell you just the way I've seen it. One Nazi officer walked over to my aunt, how she was holding the baby, pretending to breastfeed. He tried to take the baby away. She wouldn't let him. A tug war developed. Can you imagine that small kid? He was screaming his lungs out. He was hurt, he was scared. Eventually, the Nazi was stronger. He was able to take the baby. He put the baby on his shoulder, started to walk away. My aunt tried to rush after him, but somebody from behind grabbed her, a Nazi soldier, held her tight, and a death struggle became. She was struggling, all her might. The Nazi was strong. But the mother fighting for a baby, she had superpower. She was able to break away from the Nazi, ran after the other one carrying the baby. That one carrying the baby knew there was some pandemonium. He stopped for a second. He just looked sideways. He found himself face to face my aunt. She took her sharp fingernail, made a bloody mess out of his face. I don't know if she took his eyes but made a bloody mess. It only took a second or so before the Nazi, whose grip she got away from, he was right there with his revolver. There were many people around. He didn't shoot. Crowd all over. He took the gun by the nozzle, and with the butt of the gun, he struck her so heavy in the back of the head, the skull opened up, blood of marrow flowing. She collapsed into the ground, I remember, in the dirt. I wish she was dead, but she still had a little life left, and I heard her in Hungarian, very weakly begging, "Please, let my baby go." And then she collapsed, Probably she didn't see what happened afterwards. The Nazi with the bleeding face got over to the boxcar. We got where we exited from. He threw the baby up in the air. I remember he caught the baby by the feet. With two arms, put the baby's body behind, and with a tremendous blow, he squashed the baby's head right against the wagon wheel. A sight like that, you never get over. Afterwards, my brother and I, we were standing there, dry heaving. Probably we lost consciousness to a certain way from the terrific scene. We didn't know what happened to Mom. Mom was gone. Andres and I, we looked at each other. We just shook our head. I wonder, where is Mom? We lost her. We didn't have too much time because Nazis ordered us. Don't remember exactly what they were yelling, but probably they weren't nice about it. And we had to form a line to line up for a different inspection. They ordered us to get undressed. My brother and I, we were beside each other. We started to get undressed, but before I did, I went into my pocket, and as a Boy Scout, I was very strong in the Scout movement. I pulled out from my pocket a little knife like that, Swiss pocket knife. It was blue, but exactly the same. I put it in my fist, and somehow I didn't want to part with it. I wanted to take that pocket knife, take it into the camp. I don't know for what reason, but I wanted to have it. We didn't dare to talk each other while we lined up naked, following hundreds of other people, because we saw two people were talking to each other. The Nazis grabbed them out of the line. They never rejoined us, so we kept quiet. What went through my mind, of course, that I do remember, that was a deathly shadow, the memory of baby Peter. But somehow humans are designed, you always try to save yourself no matter what you see. At least that was in our case. And we wanted to survive. There's no way we could help and rescue Peter. And my thought was to be able to save the knife, to take it with me. If I take this knife and put it in my tongue, under the tongue, the Nazis would never discover it. But the actual situation, we were lined up, and we were approximately, I should say, about 30 yards away, a low distance away from the Nazi inspectors. They were in white jacket. And I also noticed these Nazis, they had a metal bucket similar what we used on the train for water and sewage, they had beside their feet. And when the inspector looked at the prisoners, opened their mouth, they didn't want to, they squeezed it open, and they had a plier. If anybody had some gold teeth, the gold teeth came out, they threw it into that bucket for their treasury. Of course, it was full of blood also. I knew I cannot sneak my knife in my mouth, so I had to make a decision. Either take that knife Of course, not this way, but behind my back, to drop it on the ground or come up with something. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble. In desperation, I took that knife, I spat on it, it was dripping from saliva. I put it behind me, and I shoved it up to a place where the sun did not shine. The Nazis inspected my mouth. We had to have the arms open. They passed me through, so the knife was with me. We only spent maybe 1 or 2 nights in Auschwitz. We never got assigned work. We never got tattooed. Most people going to Auschwitz, they all got tattooed. By the way, misconception, people thought that many places tattooed. Only Auschwitz-Birkenau tattooed people. Many people from Auschwitz, after they got tattooed, they sent all over. But the only tattooing was in Auschwitz. So we were outside in a compound, a lot of people milling around. We talking, try to prophesize what's going to happen. None of us know. But then I saw a thick rope separating a group of people. And when I was beside it, I heard these 2 Hungarians talking, and they were mentioning, God, wish we didn't have to leave Auschwitz. We already selected, because they have some family in Auschwitz. They arrived together. And then I had an idea I shared with my brother. And we have the 2. I heard you talking. If you want to stay, simple. Answer us not. But if you do, we lifted the rope, dive underneath, and we changed place. We did. Not much later, we got counted down, and apparently the number was correct, and we got herded into other boxcar to be taken away. That other boxcar, destination Mühldorf. Not too many people heard of Mühldorf. A lot of people heard about Dachau. Mühldorf was the work camp of Dachau. They needed approximately, they didn't share the figures with me, so I have to go my approximation, what I read, what I heard. They needed about 800 people to work in Mühldorf. They were building the last resistance, a huge underground factory. They wanted to cover it completely with concrete, an arch of concrete, which was about 15 feet thick on top with barbed wire, so even the American bombs could not penetrate. And they built 2 stories inside, not functional, but building in huge fever to be able to finish it. That's where we had to go. In Mühldorf, we were based in barracks. The barracks had twin beds, twin bunks on top and bottom. Andrisha and I, we got 2 bunks on top. Unfortunately, we have no mattress. Some people were fortunate in like a huge potato sack was filled with straw, and they had a mattress. We only had straw, and that's where we had to sleep on. So after entering these barracks, and we had to go to work, through the Bavarian forest near Mühldorf, we had to march, again roughly. It felt like far away, but at least a couple of miles or more through the Bavarian forest. At workplace, we had to clear a lot of the area from trees. Then we had to take a lot of cement bags, carry it up to cement mixers, which were finishing up this huge concrete shell. The cement bags were in cement paper bags. What was the weight of each? I don't know. My estimate, at least 50 pounds or even more, because two people had to lift the bag, one couldn't lift it, and we prisoners, we had to go underneath. They put it on our neck and shoulder, and you had to carry it up a wooden ramp. These cement papers or cement bags were open and papers scattered all around. My brother and I, before we went back to the barracks, we gathered a lot of these cement papers. And he helped me to tear the paper out about this size. We put them all together, then drilled a hole, and with some wires we found, we bound them and made the diary very similar like this. It looked just like that, probably thicker. This diary was given to me by a teacher, Bobby Musteler, from St. George Mill Creek High School. By the way, Bobby, if you're watching, greetings, thank you. As it happened, yesterday morning, she came to visit us in our retirement place.
Oh, that's
And
so
I thank her again for this. Anyway, this is how the way the diary looked like. Now to me to write the diary, it wasn't easy. I was age 13, and I wanted to write the diary. The diary was constructed, ready to write in, but I had no pencils. So I took this diary, and when people asked me, "Hey, Pista, what have you got in those?" I said, "Empty pages," and I showed them. Nothing to it. Then why you keep it from? I didn't want to tell them write the diary. I said, as soon as I can get hold of some pencils, I love to draw. So I put it underneath the mattress. Everybody had cement paper bags we collected. We used it for headgear. We used it to make jackets or wear around our feet. And I also made this. Going to work, it takes about 2.5 miles. And to work, I was able to find some sandstones about this size. And I collected some of them and put it in my pocket. Those days we were still in very good shape. Many times Andres and I were singing some scout songs, tried to cheer each other up. Then he saw me collecting some of these small sandstone, put it in my pocket and said, "Pista, you crazy? It's hard enough to walk back and forth, no food, and you put some stones in your pocket? What's wrong with you?" I said, "Andres, I have an idea," and I shared it with him. Those sandstones, when I get home, from the right ones, with my little pocket knife, I'm going to scratch and carve out some statues. By the way, I have to mention to you that when we got issued spoons at the camp, most of us, a lot of us, took the spoons. We were very inventive, and on granite we ground it down and we made kind of knives out of it. That knife, what I had, it was very precision. I don't think anybody else had it. So when we got back to the barracks, I started to carve. First, I carved a dog's head. You have to have a good imagination to realize it was a dog. I wasn't proud of it. Then the other sandstone with the mistakes what I learned on the first, I started to carve, and I carved a horse's head. And even Andrish had to say, Pista, that's beautiful. Well, I imagine I smiled. I took that horse's head with me to work. And this, call him a gentleman, a German guard. I don't think he wasn't an SS. He was a regular soldier, Wehrmacht. His name was Herr Hoffmann. So during lunchtime, I showed Herr Hoffmann his horse's head. He looked at it. He said, my God, that's beautiful. When did you find it? I didn't find, sir. I carved it. You carved this? I said, yes. Then he was thinking, do you think you can carve some more of these little gadgets? I said, yeah. He said, can I have this one? It's yours. I didn't say a word. But a few seconds later, what would you like for it? My God, my chance. Sir, if you could give me a little extra food so I can share with my brother and a couple of pencils, I get you the food. But what you need pencils for? You are not in a school. You're not going to start writing and studying. I said, sir, I'm not, but I love to draw. The same way I love to carve, I love to draw, and I need pencils to draw. Oh, you are a little artist. I tell you what, I get you 2 pencils. Got my pencils, got my extra food. I sharpened the pencils, and this is the way I was able to write the diary without too much exposure. I didn't sit on my bunk bed so people come there and I made it easy for them. I sat near the entrance of the barrack inside. There was an empty space, no bunk bed. I sat down, put my back against it, opened my diary, and started to draw pictures. Andrish knew I was very good at drawing, but he laughed when he saw the grotesque lines I drew as pictures. So I informed him, I said, please don't make comments. That's on purpose. People going to come by to look what I'm doing. And the drawings are so awful. So after a while, they're not even going to see to come. As a matter of fact, that's what they said. They stopped by when we were not working, of course. And he said, Pista, let me see you drawing. Here you are. You call this drawing? They crummy. I said, well, I don't care. I enjoy doing them. You don't have to watch them. And after a day or so, they passed me by. And that's when, on top pages, I had few of these awful drawings. And underneath, when nobody saw, I started to write my diary. When I saw somebody walking by, I just flipped a few pages, and that's all they could see, this awful drawing. By the way, in this diary, I have the comments of the student and Mrs. Musteller, the picture what they gave me from her students. But the outside of the diary, that's what really counted. And I was writing the diary day after day, week after week, until liberation. And that's how the diary became an original diary. Many people wrote books about the Holocaust. Few years after, many years after, memory, liberation. I wrote it right on the spot. So anyway, days were going by, many hard labor, many beatings, I cannot get into it. It wasn't easy. Of course, I wasn't alone. I was just a number, because there were many other prisoners going through the same thing. One day, returned from work, and we went to bed. Oh, by the way, that time, we were walking through the Bavarian forest. By that time, we were starving. It wasn't a week after we arrived. I'm talking many months. We worn our body down. Originally, when I went into camp, not in kilos, in pounds, I was close to 140 some odd pounds. I was a very husky youngster. After liberation, the American German doctors, they weighed me at 72 pounds. But anyway, we were walking home from work in a zigzag, a long line through the Bavarian forest. And I noticed further down, much ahead, there was a red berry bush. So with Andres we are talking, my God, we're going to get to the berry bush. We're going to take a handful of berries, put it in our pocket, and we have some extra food. By the time we got there, the berry bush was empty. I was very disappointed. I looked up to God. I know we are your chosen people. Would you please choose somebody else? How dare you, even starving prisoners, and you begrudge some lousy berries from me? My brother didn't like my remark. He gave me a big shove with the elbow. He said, "Shut up, Pista. God works mysterious ways." We got back to the barracks. No berries. We went to sleep. Following morning, on the top bunk, hang my feet down. It was a chore to slide down now. It wasn't easy. And before started to slide down to go to work again, I saw on the cement in between the bunk beds some people lying. Some people in their bunk bed, they doubled up. The berries were highly poisonous. Many people died, a lot of them in cramps. I remember sitting there, putting my hand together. Dear God, would you please forgive me? Thank you for saving Anders in my life. From now on, I will never doubt you. But I had to make a little remark, I remember. But one thing I would like to mention to you. I believe helping myself. And whenever I'm in trouble, I will try to help myself. And if I get out of it, I'm going to thank you for giving me the strength and the wisdom to help myself. Because you are the ultimate and you control everything. And that has changed my outlook in religion and everything. And I practice. I don't care what religion you practice. You have to believe in something. And as long as you believe in something, you do what you can, you have a good attitude, you'll come out ahead with the help of God. Not much afterwards, one day, we returned to the bunk bed at night. It was almost a year later, it must have been April 1945. We got liberated April 30th, 1945. So this must have been either the end of May or beginning of April. I had no calendar. And when I ready to go to work, slid down that bunk bed, many times I fell to the ground, because I was so weak, and waiting for Andres to come. Andres couldn't come. He said, I can't move. I had to go to work, report, walk, or we helped each other, taking step by step. By the time I returned, Andres' bed was empty, only the straw. I was devastated. We had a barrack commander, a Jewish prisoner. That was a terrific job. He didn't have to go to work, and he had extra food, because when the foods were distributed, some people couldn't make it, so he was okay. I asked him, where's Andres? He said, you should know. People cannot work. They take them to death barracks. Now I'd like to update you. We were working 7 days a week, but the past couple of months or so, they allowed us to have one Sunday free. That Sunday was going to come up. And I knew Andres was in death barrack. Death barrack was in our compound. And I had no plans. I tried to rescue Andres. From the meager food what we were getting, with my little knife, cut low pieces, I saved the crumbs under my jacket, because if you left it open, people would steal your eyes out. Everybody was dying. So I kept it under my jacket. That Sunday came. We didn't have to go to work that one day. I left the barracks within the compound, and I found death barracks. Nobody liked to go in there, because people who were carried in, usually they left the barrack feet first. When I entered the barracks, very similar like ours, double bunks, but 2 people in one bunk bed. I bent down a little bit, hang on, not to collapse, and top of my lungs as long as I could. Andres Nasser, where are you? I'm going step by step, no motion. Finally, to the end of the barrack at the bottom, as I look in, I saw 2 of these skeletons covered up with that dirty blanket. And when I said, Andres Nasser, where are you? One of the bodies, it was eerie, skin and bone, started to raise, with the eyes closed. Soon as he opened his eyes, I knew it was Andres. Beautiful blue eyes. Nobody had eyes like that. Said, Andres, you here? And he also tried to say something what I heard. Pista, that's Pista, something my dear Pista. Thank you, God. I knew Pista will come before I die. Andres, you're not dying. I have food for you. You come back with me. We'll be liberated. I hear the guns getting closer. The Allies are advancing. Then I begged the person beside him. He kind of slid out of the bunk bed. I got beside my brother. I put my arm underneath, put my head very close to his. And I said, Andreshkam, I love you. I'm not going to let you die. Here is a few piece of crumbs or food. Please eat it. Then I remember when he was very emotional, he used to call me my little brat. He said, my little brat, thank you, but look under my blanket. I opened his blanket. There were a few dried up morsels He could not eat, he could not digest. I looked back at him and he said, Pista, I believe in you, but please promise me, promise, you're going to share the diary with the public and let people know that it should never happen again to any human beings. And also, when I'll be up there with Mom and Dad, we would like to see you smile. As long as you're smiling, we'll be smiling back at you. If you are in danger of you hurting, of course, we cannot smile either. I promised him. And then I looked down and I said, Andris, say something, blink. Waited. Andris couldn't say another word. Andris couldn't blink. Andris died right in my hand. I took my 2 fingers, I closed his eyelid. I knew I promised him smiles. I broke down, I cried. Then I got some strength within me. I had to lay on this body, have to leave him there, go back to my barracks, and I gathered all the strength I could to keep Andris happy. Not too many days later, we didn't have to go to work. It was very unusual. Finally, we opened the door of the barrack, looked out. All the Nazis with their vicious dogs were gone. We saw a few German Wehrmacht with rifles walking up and down. No commandos, no orders. This I heard later. The Nazis ordered the Wehrmacht guards who left, collect everyone, put them into boxcars, take the boxcars by the train up to Bavarian Alps, execute everyone. They didn't want to see any dead bodies around. The Germans, the Wehrmacht, they collected us. They put us in boxcars. They did not follow the command of the SS. They didn't take us up to Bavaria to be executed. The few remaining prisoners who were alive, they filled up the boxcars. They took us station to station. I don't know the commotion, what happened, because one of the train was shut out. Then they collected us in 2 different trains. But I remember we went through a certain village or a community where the train doors were still closed. The train stopped, and outside we heard noise in German. Alles frei. That means everybody free. They opened the doors. I couldn't move. The only thing I can remember, my complete boxcar emptied out. People crowded out and tried to go to the village. And in envy, I pulled my body, whatever left of it, to the edge of the train. And I remember alone, lying at the bottom of the boxcar and looking out. And I still remember, I wish I could join them. Maybe some help will come. Not much later, when the prisoners were trying to move towards town, Nazi SS groups with rifle and machine gun, they were killing the people left and right. People who were still close to my boxcar, and I was watching all that. They got wounded, some of them were still okay. They got shot, they crawled back to the boxcar. A good friend of mine, Janos. I saw him come back to the boxcar, and I was saying, Pista will be free soon. A bullet hit his head, spin around, fell out of the boxcar. Then I passed out. We had an air raid also by planes. And apparently one of the bullets must have caught my knee. I still have that spot over there, even so it healed. You can still see trace of it. It didn't hit the bone, just enough by luck, just skinned me enough for me to bleed. I passed out. Next time, when I opened my eyes, it must have been about 5-6 days later, when the American soldiers found the boxcar, emptied all the bodies, and they found some life in me. So they took me to a hospital. What I was told, I was hallucinating for a few days, talking in fever and such. And eventually when I opened my eyes, I saw the faces of nurses and doctors. They were in white uniform. First my thought, laying there, trying to open my eyes, could hardly move. Oh my God, I must be with Andres somewhere. I'm in heaven. These are angels. Angels supposed to have wings. They didn't. So I knew they were not angels. Then they talked to me very gently, and they said, you were in a coma for many days. We didn't think you will survive. You were talking and you were mentioning Andres. Who's Andres? I said, Andres is my brother. You were talking to him. Where were you talking to him? I saw him in heaven. I was there with him. And I begged him, Andres, it's so beautiful here. Please let me stay with you. Then in a strong voice, he said, not yet, Pista. And that's why I lost him. Not Yet Pista became the name of my play, which had been presented in 3 different cities. Not Yet Pista. Andres thought, my days are not over yet. And he was right. Eventually, I'm going to join him, including my family. I lived a long life. Most of my promise, I promised Andres I kept. I made a lot of presentation to be exactly today's presentation, if I can call it a presentation, but it's on film. It's my 1178th presentation. Took a lot of effort. With my wife, Francoise, we have been married 40 years. Francoise is not Jewish. It doesn't matter. We're both human beings. She assisted me every single lecture. She never missed one. She has been my guardian angel. By profession, she's a professional nurse. Well, we both had to learn how to nurse each other, but she has been a guiding life. Francois, thank you for all you have done for me also. And thank all the people who have helped me during my life. God bless all of you. And God bless America. We must be proud of our flag. We must be proud of our heritage. I'm not a born American, but I'm a very proud American. And people who disgrace the flag, they have to answer to a higher power, not to me. In the meantime, we have to keep on going and make the best of every situation. That's all basically I have to say. If any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for sharing your story. Like I said, I can't even imagine everything you've gone through, and I know you can't even talk about all that you have, and that's why I really hope people get your book as well, because that has your diary entries and they can read that, correct? So I am just so unbelievably honored to have you. And where can people get your book at? Is it like available on Amazon? Do they message you? How do they get your book?
Okay, let me put it this way. Amazon, originally the book was published by Las Vegas Review Journal,
Oh, okay.
book publisher. Then the company went out of business and Amazon took over. So Amazon published the book. When I need a lot of books, I have to order from Amazon. Many times people like to have a signed book. I do have some at the place where I live, and if people email me by exchange of a check, I can mail them a signed book to their name. If you mind to hand me 2 books from the diary, when I rewrote the book, the name of the book became My Brother's Voice. I honored my brother. As a matter of fact, that's a little story also. At the bottom, it said, a story kept secret for 50 years. That is a fact. I kept it a secret for 50 years. Because when I returned to Hungary, I had the diary and I rewrote it again in English. But again, I did not want to publish the diary for the simple reason. The father of the little baby, Peter, and the husband of Uncle and Buzzy, who I watched massacred, I met him in Hungary where I returned. By luck, he was not in the Holocaust because the Hungarian army drafted him previously. So approximately early 1943, he had to go and fight the Russian front. And after the war was over, he returned. In the Nasser house, he didn't find anyone. And when I returned quite a bit later, because when the Americans liberated me, when I was hallucinating, they weighed me in at 72 pounds. And it took a few months before they fed me and such, and I was able to be on my feet, gained back to about 140 pounds when I returned to Hungary. And when I met my uncle questioned me, Pista, you were together, my wife, my baby. Please tell me, what happened to them? I looked Uncle Charles in the eye and I said, Uncle Charles, yes, we were taken away together, but we got separated. And I lied. I do not know what happened to Peter and Aunt Buzzy. But I said, one thing for sure, there is no way you can expect them to return. It's impossible. He was very sad, but he never heard or learned the circumstances, what I witnessed. That is the reason I refused to publish the diary. My uncle died in 1996. In 1997, the first time from Pahrump, I got asked to speak to a school. I spoke there, and it took a few years before I was able to find a publisher. So I started to speak around and told them eventually the book will be published. And I wrote down hundreds and hundreds of names where people said after lecturing, when the book published, please get in touch with me. The book was published in 2003. And also in 2003, I was invited to San Jose to speak to many schools. My doctor, my personal doctor, and he lives in Las Vegas, God bless him, Dr. Gary Grossman. He took care of me all the time. He put me through stress tests, everything fine. But in 2003, when I went on a assignment for about 2 weeks, speak to many schools, he told me, he said, Steve, I noticed one of your stress tests had a little abnormality. Instead of going to speak, why don't you have an angiogram? I said, I'm sorry, the angiogram have to wait. I'm not going to disappoint those people. So when I came back in 2003 and went through the angiogram, to make a long story short, I had an open heart surgery and I have 5 bypasses. But thank God I never had a heart attack. Just yesterday, not by him, but by a doctor, I had another examination, and he said, you're still in good shape. Despite you being over 90, keep up the good work. I don't have to see him for another year. Okay. So life wasn't that easy. But people who would like to have a signed copy, they would have to get on my website to send me an email. My email address is the same as the name of the book, in small case, My Brother's Voice, at AOL.com. My Brother's Voice at AOL.com. And after the first book was published, and many people read it, I had a girlfriend in Hungary who also was responsible to help me regain my mental stability, Vera. And here I said goodbye to Vera. Then thousands of requests. What happened to Vera? We would like to know. So in 2015, many years later, I went on a cruise and I wrote my second book, which is the follow-up of this one. This book, Journey to Freedom, this book continues. Actually, it picks up about a half an hour after I finished this. And this book goes all the way to 2015 and explains what happened to Vera, because during that time I was even able to get a picture. By the way, I'm very proud of this cover. This cover was done by my granddaughter, Chelsea Lauren Jones. She's a very well-known photographer in Hollywood. She goes to Emmys all over the place. As a matter of fact, just last week, we spent some time with her in Laguna Beach, where we were on vacation. Thank you, Chelsea, for what you have done. Here, I told her what I would like to have, as she illustrated very nicely, Statue of Liberty, how from the Holocaust, the ashes, the train leads to the Statue of Liberty, first to Canada, because first I was taken to Canada and then to United States of America. So both of these books can be acquired by Amazon, or if you want a signed copy, that's to me. And I think I said almost all the information. And by the way, I want to say what I mentioned to you, what I talked to you, it's only a small piece of mosaic of the whole story. And there are thousands of these stories. You put these pieces together and then you can get the whole picture. Because every one of us have a story. And you just heard mine. Maybe some different than others. Of course, I only can talk about what happened to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And I, like I said, it's such a horrible, dark piece of history that we don't want to really remember because it's so horrifying, but we need to remember it and put it in people's minds and show it was a real thing that happened, and you're telling your story is so important to make sure that it never happens again, because it can never, ever happen again.
As a matter of fact, I did write a poem. Is it okay if I read it?
Absolutely.
It's in the second book. The name of the poem, Not Yet Pista. First Andries, then Pista brothers, were born unto the sea of life, to a family of loving parents, were protected from harm and strife. They sailed through happy childhood, educated side by side. Andries was Pista's hero, was never let out of his sight. As they grew up year by year, created a tie bond to last, never to be broken by any storm evil can cast. As cloud of despair darkened the sky, the brothers found strength and trust in each other's company. Even the rough seas could not bust. Growing up became a challenge, as the Nazis stormed in their lives, tore them apart from ones they loved, and took their family never to be found alive. At a tender age, the orphans were deported to Auschwitz death camps, beaten, starved, and degraded. Their love gave them inner strength. Losing strength and loss of weight, their survival became too quickly vain. Pista wrote his diary, assured his hope would never fade. Andries weakened as time marched by, tossed around within the storm. Pista made a promise to his brother he would never be forlorn. Andries passed in Pista's arms. The Nazis surrendered in killing the brother, but failed to break their bond and their love for one another. The fury of storm has passed. Pista kept his promise to his brother. He shared his diary and spread the word of they had agreed one to other. Years gone by, memories are faded, but Pista and Andries' bond will never be degraded. An unconscious Pista was liberated. He thought he saw his brother in heaven. He called out, I want to be with you, Andris replied. Not yet, Pista. You have time given. Thank you.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And I believe you really did. Do you believe you really saw your brother in heaven when you were unconscious?
Let me put that I haven't talked about also. I used to dream a lot and remember lots of my dreams.
Uh-huh.
This must have been hallucination when I was recovering for about 5-6 days. They said I have a very high fever and I didn't know if I was going to even open my eyes. And I talked probably in a feverish state, but I thought I did see Andres.
I believe you did. Especially with your mind in there, and I think he gave you the strength to go on. I really believe he said that to you.
As a matter of fact, some people ask, what did I bring back from camp? Number one, I left the misery and the horrible state behind. I don't forget. But I brought with me the positive. What is positive? Appreciate freedom and family. When you lose freedom, you can lose family. People don't realize how much I would give from my life if I could hug my brother, my mother again. I can't. But how many students or people go home from work or school? I advise them, give your parents a hug, tell them you love them, don't take it for granted. I would give my life to do a hug, but I can't. But you people can do it still to your loved one. So appreciate what you have. Then you have to have good attitude. Attitude is everything. Sometimes I tell people, which actually I believe in, I don't have problems. They say, wait a second, everybody has problems. I said, maybe you do, but I don't. I turn the problem into a challenge. As soon as you take your problem as a challenge, instead of just giving up, you work your way through it. I advise many, many people, like, for example, ask children, what would you like to be when you grow up? They said, well, I like to be a doctor, would like to be an attorney, like to be this and that. I said, let's say, if you like to be a doctor, what you do for it? And they said, well, I'm trying very hard to become one. You failed. I said, I'm trying hard. That is not good enough. If you have an attitude in anything, I am going to be a doctor, I challenge the whole world to stop me, and they're going to fail. Now you have a good chance. Attitude is everything. So something like that I leave behind. And also, one major point, what I didn't mention, in camp, I thought I was a part-time prisoner. And the simple reason, because I used to dream a lot, used to remember a lot, I still dream a lot. Maybe sometime only seconds, but in the morning you remember a lot. And I figured out the Nazis controlled me physically. My body actually belonged to them, they controlled it. But it didn't take long to figure they didn't control my mind. I was full control of my mind. So I turned everything around. At night time, before I went to sleep, closed my eyes, thought about my parents, vacation, my brother, soccer game, Boy Scouts, and all the good things. And most of it, I was dreaming throughout the night. In the morning I woke up, the dreams were gone, but I told myself, Pista, from now on, what you dream is reality. Believe in it. When you wake up into a nightmare. You just have to get over nightmare and you're back in reality again. So I called myself a part-time prisoner. I worked on mentally. Most of the time it helped. At least it helped a lot.
No, I just think you are so incredible, and like I said, I think so many people can learn from you, and what you just said really makes you think twice about everything and really opens your eyes. And you're right, attitude is completely everything, and we all need to learn from each other and love from each other, because like you said, all our little problems and stuff, they're not really problems. We have to think of it differently, and we have to just come together and unite and make sure nothing like this ever happens again, ever again. So.
And we have to realize love is much stronger than hate.
Absolutely.
So love each other. Get rid of hatred. It's not easy. It has to be worked hard, very hard.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on. It was truly an honor. And please go get his books. Email him and then send him the check and then get them signed, because I know I want them signed. So make sure you get them. And thank you. I truly cannot thank you enough for being on. It was such an honor. Such an honor. So.
Well, thank you very much for having me, giving me the time. And I appreciate if other people realize, but please, one thing, don't ever feel sorry for me. I mean, whatever we have gone through, of course, nobody is grateful. But I had to be very, very thankful. For example, the place where I am at, Red Rock Point, retirement place, on April the 8th, they have, it was Holocaust Memorial Day all around. And they surprised me. The management called me on stage. They showed the film, the small short story, Pista, and afterwards they give me all kind of reward. As a matter of fact, from the mayor of Las Vegas, I got a placard where Mrs. Goodman declared April Day as Stephen Nasser Day in Las Vegas. And afterwards, they led me outside near the flagpole. They planted a tree in my name, and they laid a memorial on steel stakes and put it right behind, which is very honoring. Now I know, even after I'm gone, I do have a family tree. And would you believe it? 2 weeks after, somebody stole that stake from our retirement place. It just shows you people.
Oh my gosh.
And the management said, well, we make sure it won't happen again. They reordered the memorial plaque and they put it in cement.
Good.
And the sheriff of Las Vegas, he gave me a proclamation.
Yes.
They're going to install in the front of the police station into the ground a brick in my memory,
That's awesome.
which I appreciate anything. It's not to remember me, but remember we are all human beings. I don't care where you were born. Like sometimes I ask, can you choose the parent you're going to be born to? No. Can you choose the country you're going to be born into? No. Can you choose what religion you're going to be born into, your parents' religion? No. So it just goes to show you, we are all human beings, and I don't care what color, creed you are, whatever country you were born, you are not guilty. If you committed crime, you are the only one who knows it. That's why I do not discriminate against people who were born in any country, including in Germany. People who done it, yes. But because you were born, you are not guilty. And people have to realize that. They shouldn't live with that burden to carry that my country is the only one. The people who done it, yes, but the country you were born into, it is just a country. Be proud of it and be nice to each other, that's all. Well, I'm not going to ramble on any longer.
No, I could talk to you for hours. No, you speak such words of wisdom, and like I said, we really need to unite now more than ever. So, I cannot thank you enough so much. It's truly an honor, and thank you guys so much for watching. Please, please, please email him. We'll put the email down below so you can see it, and go get his books and get them signed. And thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, never give up, always believe, and you'll achieve. Thank you. God bless.